My name is Autumn Reed, and the day my plane landed back in Florida, my phone lit up with a message that felt like a slap. Sold the family beach house for $5 million. Thanks for being abroad. It was from my little sister. That house wasn't just property. It was my grandmother's legacy, the one place I'd promised to protect while I was halfway across the world working as a doctor. I didn't even wait for my suitcase. I rented a car with shaking hands and drove straight to the coast, replaying that text, trying to convince myself it had to be a joke. But as I turned onto the familiar street, my stomach dropped. Our quiet stretch of sand looked like a construction zone. Trucks jammed the driveway. A crew was ripping up the old deck like it was nothing more than scrap wood. I slammed the car door and marched up the path. "Hey, what are you doing to my house?" I shouted. A man in a hard hat barely glanced up as he shouted orders at his workers. To them, I was just some random woman yelling over a job they'd already been paid for. Someone in a crisp blazer walked toward me with a clipboard and a polite, practiced smile, the kind of smile people wear when they think the paperwork is on their side. In that second, I knew this wasn't a prank. Somewhere, on some stack of documents, my sister had used my name to erase me. When family mixes love with greed, the horror story doesn't start with a ghost. It starts with a text. Keep listening, because those official papers are exactly why the sheriff later told my sister, "Ma'am, you're under arrest for fraud." The woman in the blazer stopped a few feet away from me, eyeing me like a problem she hadn't planned on. "Can I help you?" she asked, voice smooth but guarded. I lifted my chin. "Yes. You can stop tearing apart my grandmother's house. This property belongs to my family." She blinked once, then glanced toward the construction crew, as if weighing how much of her time I was worth. "This property was purchased 6 weeks ago. We have a recorded deed and a full sales contract." "Who exactly are you?" "I'm the owner," I shot back. "My name is Autumn Reed." Something in her expression shifted. She tucked the clipboard against her chest. "That's interesting." Without explaining, she motioned me toward the porch, away from the noise. "Look, I don't want a scene. My husband and I wired $5 million for this place. We were told the sale was urgent, that the other heir had already signed everything from overseas." My stomach flipped. "What other heir?" "Your sister," she said carefully. "She said you'd agreed, that you were too busy on humanitarian missions to deal with the paperwork." My throat went dry. It was one thing to get that text. It was another to hear a stranger recite my life back to me like a sales pitch Samantha had rehearsed. The woman unlocked a leather folder and opened it just enough for me to see the top page. My full legal name stared back at me in bold print: Autumn Elizabeth Reed, above a line labeled Seller. And beneath it, in clean, confident ink, was my signature. Only I had never signed it. I felt my pulse in my ears. If my fake signature had made it onto a deed, that meant county records, banks, lawyers. Everyone believed I'd willingly sold my grandmother's legacy. And if that was true, then my sister's little text wasn't just a betrayal, it was a crime. I looked up at the woman and forced myself to speak calmly. "If that's really my signature," I said, "then someone is in a lot of trouble. And I think you and I are both about to find out exactly who." I left the beach house before I did something stupid in front of the workers. My hands were still shaking as I drove to the county courthouse. The leather folder's image burned into my brain. If my name and signature were really on those documents, I needed proof. Official proof. Before I confronted anyone. Inside the records office, fluorescent lights hummed overhead while a clerk typed my information into her computer. "You're looking for the deed transfer on the Reed Beach property?" she confirmed. I nodded. "Anything related to its sale in the last year, and I need copies." She printed out a thin stack of papers and slid them across the counter as if they were nothing, but to me, they felt like evidence in a murder trial. The murder of my trust. I stepped aside and flipped through the pages. There it was. Purchase and sale agreement. Seller: Autumn Elizabeth Reed. Buyer: Washington Family Holdings, LLC. My chest tightened as my eyes dropped to the bottom. The signature line carried my name in fluid, practiced strokes, identical to the way I'd signed medical licenses and passport forms 100 times before. It looked like me, down to the slight curve in the A, but I had never seen this contract in my life. "This is a forgery," I whispered. The clerk looked up. "Ma'am?" I swallowed hard. "This signature, it's not mine." "The documents were notarized," she replied, her tone turning more cautious. "There's also a witness and a notary seal. If you believe there's fraud, you may want to speak with law enforcement or an attorney." I kept reading, following the line of legal jargon until something else snagged my attention. Witness: Liam Carter. My vision blurred for a second. Liam Carter. The name I used to write next to mine with little hearts in the margins when we were engaged. The man who'd held my hand and promised to build a future with me. The man who said he supported my decision to work abroad, even if it meant distance. I traced his signature with my fingertip. He hadn't just watched my sister steal from me. He'd signed his name beneath it to make it official. I snapped photos of every page, my movements precise now, almost surgical. This wasn't just a family argument anymore. This was conspiracy, forgery, fraud, words that came with prison sentences. As I walked out of the courthouse into the heavy coastal air, one thought cut through the chaos in my head. My sister hadn't done this alone. And the next time I saw her, I'd be bringing the truth with me. I didn't want to go straight back to the beach house and explode. I needed witnesses, people who knew us, who could see Samantha for who she really was when the mask slipped. So I texted my oldest friend, Emily. "I'm back. It's about the beach house. I need you." She replied almost instantly, "Come over, now." Emily opened the door before I even knocked. "You look like you haven't slept in days," she said, pulling me into a quick hug. "What's going on?" I spread the courthouse copies across her dining table. "Samantha sold the beach house, without me. These are the papers. That's my signature. Except it isn't." Emily leaned over the pages, her brows knitting together. "You're sure you never signed any remote power of attorney forms? Nothing for her to act on your behalf?" "I'm a doctor, not an idiot," I snapped, then immediately softened. "Sorry, I would never sign away that house." Before Emily could answer, the front door swung open. Samantha stepped inside like she owned the place, sunglasses perched on her head, phone in hand. "You texted me, emergency," she said to Emily, then spotted me. Her smile froze. "Wow, look who finally came home." I slid one of the contracts toward her. "You want to explain this?" For a split second, pure panic flickered in her eyes. Then she rolled them and let out a laugh. "Oh my God, is that all? I thought someone had died." "Autumn, you're being dramatic. We sold the house. It was sitting there, falling apart. And you're never even here." "We?" I repeated. "You mean, you sold it? Using my name?" "You signed digital forms," she insisted. "Remember those documents I emailed you months ago? You told me to handle it." "Those were tax documents," I said coldly. "Not a $5 million sale." Samantha's tone sharpened. "I did what was best for us. We're drowning in student loans, medical bills, repairs." "Don't you dare pretend this was for me," I cut in. "Where's the money, Sam?" She crossed her arms. "Invested, managed. It's complicated. You wouldn't understand." Emily cleared her throat, pointing at the bottom of the page. "If this was all so legitimate, why is there a notarized signature from someone who clearly wasn't there?" Samantha's gaze darted down. I followed her eyes to the witness line, Liam Carter. Emily frowned. Who is Liam? My throat tightened. The room felt smaller, the walls closer. He's my ex, I said, each word slow and sharp. The man who once promised to marry me, and apparently, the man who watched my sister sign my name on a contract I never saw. The color drained from Emily's face. Samantha looked between us, her confidence slipping. I gathered the papers into a folder, my decision solidifying with every breath. You didn't just cross a line, Sam. You broke the law. And if you think I'm going to let this slide because we share DNA, you have no idea who you just picked a fight with. 2 days later, we met at the beach house. Samantha's idea. Let's talk where it all started, she'd texted, like this was some sentimental sisterly disagreement instead of a felony. I brought Emily with me, and I'd already emailed copies of the documents to an attorney and the sheriff's office, just in case. The construction crew had paused work pending clarification of ownership, which was a polite way of saying the new buyers didn't want to be anywhere near a fraud investigation. The house looked wounded. Half-finished repairs, exposed beams, plastic sheeting fluttering in the salty breeze. It felt like my grandmother's ghost could have walked out at any moment and demanded to know what we'd done. Samantha waited in the gutted living room, arms folded, tapping her foot. She looked more tired than I'd ever seen her. No makeup, dark circles, an edge of rawness that didn't match her usual curated perfection. Finally, she said, can we be adults about this? Adults don't forge signatures, I replied. Adults don't steal a house. She rolled her eyes but didn't fully meet my gaze. You're blowing this out of proportion. I had everything under control until you decided to make it a federal case. You committed a case, Emily muttered under her breath. I placed the folder on the counter between us. Here's what I know. You sold the beach house for $5 million. You used my name and a forged signature. You roped in Liam as a witness. You misled the buyers. So I'll ask you again. Where is the money? Samantha's composure cracked. Her jaw tightened, and she stared past me at the unfinished wall. Gone, she whispered. My stomach lurched. What do you mean, gone? Debts, okay? She snapped. Do you have any idea what it's like drowning in credit cards, failing businesses, people calling at all hours? I paid off everything. Some of it was mine, some of it was Liam's, some of it was people you don't want to owe. She laughed bitterly. $5 million doesn't go as far as you think when you're putting out fires. You stole a house to clean up messes you never told me about? I said, incredulous. You could have come to me. I would have helped you plan, negotiate, anything but this. You're always swooping into disaster zones overseas to save strangers, she shot back. But I'm your sister, and I was right here, and you didn't see me drowning. The words stung, but they didn't excuse what she'd done. You didn't ask for help, I said quietly. You helped yourself to what wasn't yours. Samantha's shoulders sagged. If you report this, I lose everything. My job, my license, my reputation. I could go to prison. You should have thought about that before you signed my name, I replied. Emily shifted beside me. Sam, she already has proof. This won't just go away because you're scared now. Samantha stepped closer, her voice dropping to a frantic whisper. Autumn, please. We can fix this. I'll pay you back. I'll sign whatever you want. Just don't bring the law into this. I held her gaze, feeling years of shared memories flicker between us. Childhood sleepovers in this very living room, whispered secrets on the porch swing, promises we'd made over melted ice cream. And then I remembered the text. Thanks for being abroad. Like she had counted on me being far enough away not to fight back. It's already bigger than you and me, I said. The buyers, the bank, the county, they were all lied to. This isn't a family favor. It's fraud. Somewhere outside, a car door slammed. Emily's eyes flicked toward the window. Autumn, she murmured. I think your decision just showed up. We all turned as heavy footsteps approached the open doorway. A uniformed deputy stepped inside, followed by a man in plain clothes with a badge clipped to his belt. The air in the room shifted, going from tense to electric. "Ms. Reed?" the man with the badge asked, looking at me. "I'm Sheriff Daniels. You filed a fraud report regarding this property?" Samantha's head snapped toward me. "You already called the sheriff?" "I told you this was bigger than us," I replied, my voice steady. "Yes, Sheriff. I'm Autumn Reed." He nodded and held up a tablet. "We've reviewed the documents you emailed, plus the original filings from the recorder's office. We also spoke with the buyers, the notary, and Mr. Liam Carter." At the mention of Liam's name, Samantha flinched. "And?" she demanded. Sheriff Daniels turned his attention to her. "You must be Ms. Samantha Johnson." She tried to square her shoulders. "I am. This is all just a big misunderstanding. Families handle things informally all the time." "This goes a bit beyond informal, ma'am," he said calmly. "We have a notarized deed and sales contract signed under your sister's name. The notary states she never met Dr. Reed in person and relied solely on identification and assurances provided by you. Mr. Carter has admitted you told him your sister had authorized the sale, but he never actually saw her sign." Color drained from Samantha's face. "He said that?" "He did," the sheriff replied. "And financial records show that the majority of the $5 million was wired into an account controlled exclusively by you, then rapidly dispersed to various creditors and casinos. That pattern is consistent with fraud and money laundering, not a legitimate family arrangement." Samantha looked at me, eyes wide, panic finally replacing arrogance. "Autumn, say something. Tell them you don't want to press charges. Tell them this is just a misunderstanding between sisters." My heart ached, but my voice didn't waver. "I told the truth," I said. "I never agreed to sell this house. I never signed those papers. You took my name, my inheritance, and used them like a credit card. I can't make this vanish for you." Sheriff Daniels took a slow breath, then spoke the words that had been echoing in my head since I read that text at the airport. "Ms. Johnson," he said, "based on the evidence we've reviewed, you're under arrest for fraud, forgery, and theft by deception. Please turn around and place your hands behind your back." "No," she whispered, backing away. You can't. You can't do this. She just landed. She doesn't even understand." "The real owner just landed," the sheriff replied quietly, nodding toward me. "And the paperwork says you sold a house that wasn't yours to sell." The deputy stepped forward and gently but firmly took her wrists. As the cuffs clicked shut, Samantha's eyes filled with tears, not the manipulative kind I'd seen before, but raw, terrified ones. "Autumn, please," she choked out. "We're sisters." I swallowed hard. "We were," I said softly, "before you sold me out for $5 million and a stack of bad debts." They led her past the half-ripped walls and out onto the porch where we used to watch storms roll in over the water. I listened to the Miranda rights being read over the crash of waves, feeling something inside me finally, painfully, click back into place. My house was still a mess. My family was shattered. But for the first time since that text, I felt like reality was on my side again. And Samantha? She was finally facing something she couldn't lie or sign her way out of. 6 months can feel like a lifetime when your world's been turned upside down. In half a year, the legal storm around the beach house went from chaos to a hard, final verdict. The buyers sued to unwind the sale. With the fraud exposed, the court voided the deed and returned legal ownership to me. The Washingtons got their money back from the title insurance and the bank. My attorney pushed for damages and the judge agreed. Samantha owed me restitution on top of everything else she already owed the world. She didn't have the money, of course, The 5 million she'd stolen had evaporated into gambling losses, shady investors, and creditors with long memories. Her accounts were empty, her credit destroyed. Her professional license was suspended pending a review. The plea deal kept her from serving years in prison, but it still included a felony record, strict probation, mandatory counseling, and a mountain of restitution she'd be paying off for what was likely the rest of her life. Meanwhile, the house slowly came back to life. I used a modest settlement from a separate malpractice case overseas, not my favorite memory, but still mine, to repair the roof, rebuild the deck, and restore the old blue shutters my grandmother had loved. The place no longer felt like a crime scene. It felt like a promise I'd finally kept. On a warm evening in late summer, lanterns glowed along the new railing, casting soft light across the sand. Laughter drifted from the back patio where my friends and colleagues from the hospital gathered around tables covered in food. Inside, there was a white dress hanging on the closet door. After everything, I'd found someone who loved me without needing to use my name on anything but a wedding invitation. As music floated through the open windows, I stepped out toward the front gate to catch a breath of quiet. That's when I saw her. Samantha stood on the other side of the fence, thinner than I remembered, wearing a plain dress instead of her usual designer armor. No jewelry, no carefully curated image, just a woman with tired eyes and a probation ankle monitor hidden badly by two short pants. She didn't try to open the gate. Part of her plea deal included a restraining order keeping her an agreed distance from me unless I chose otherwise. "You look different," she said softly. "So do you," I replied. We stared at each other through the bars. Behind me, someone called my name, followed by a burst of laughter when the music switched to an old song from our childhood. "I heard about the sentence," I said. "How's community service?" She gave a humorless little huff. "Picking up trash on roads I used to speed down in a convertible is poetic." For a moment, we almost smiled. Almost. Then I remembered her text. "Thanks for being abroad." "Why are you here, Sam?" I asked. "To remind me you still exist." "The courts already did that." She swallowed. "I wanted to see the house. One last time, before they transfer me to another program. And I wanted to say, I'm sorry." The words hung between us, fragile and late. "Sorry doesn't give me back the months I spent trying to untangle the mess you made," I said quietly. "It doesn't erase the fact that, when you had a choice between asking for help and forging my name, you picked the one that paid faster." Her eyes shone. "I know. I think about it every day. I see your signature in my dreams. I hear the sheriff's voice. 'Ma'am, you're under arrest for fraud.' I replay that text and wish I could unsend it." I looked past her, out at the dark water beyond the dunes. "You didn't just steal money," I said. "You stole our grandmother's trust. You stole years of peace. You turned the place we loved into evidence." "And now?" she asked, voice barely audible. "What is it now?" I glanced back at the glowing windows, the silhouettes of people who'd chosen to stand beside me, not above me or on my back. "Now it's mine," I said simply. "Legally, emotionally, completely. You made sure of that when you tried to cut me out." She nodded slowly, accepting a verdict that had nothing to do with court. "Do you hate me?" The question was small, almost childlike. I thought about it longer than she probably wanted me to. "No," I answered finally. "Hating you would mean you still get to live in my head rent-free. I'm done letting you own anything of mine." Her shoulders trembled. She wiped at her eyes. "Can I ever come in again? Someday?" I looked at the gate between us, at the house behind me, at the ghosts of who we used to be. "That depends on who you decide to be when all this is over," I said. "Right now, the answer is no." A single tear rolled down her cheek. She didn't argue, didn't beg. She just nodded, taking the refusal like it was another part of her sentence. As she turned to leave, the porch lights flared brighter behind me, spilling warmth across the sand inside the fence, but not quite reaching her. I watched my sister's shadow stretch and thin as she walked away from the house she'd tried to sell out from under me, hands empty, future uncertain. Then I closed the gate, turned back toward the laughter and light, and stepped fully into the life she'd once tried to rewrite with a forged signature and a careless text. In the end, her punishment wasn't just the record, the debts, or the years of rebuilding. It was standing on the outside of the one place she thought she could steal, and realizing it would never truly belong to her again.